Oh man, I can seriously not look at the chat when I'm getting this thing started. Ladies and gentlemen, today is October 16th, 2013, and you guys are being really funny in the chat, making me laugh before I start this thing. And today is, KNKL show number 107. Man, the naming convention or the numbering convention is getting way easier. I can always remember what day it is, what number we're on. And yeah, 107. This is the show where we learn to be better artists. I'm your host, Keenan Lafferty, and today we are going to be jumping back into the Lulu piece. The Lulu piece, let me show you exactly what I'm talking about right over here. For those of you who have been following some of my recent work, I have been doing the Yordle females from the game League of Legends. I have done Poppy and Tristana, and I am seeking now to round out the roster with Wayna, aka Lulu. Today is Wayna Wednesday. Wayna was her working title, of course, and for those of you who know, I worked at Riot during the time she was being developed, so I like to call her Wayna because I still like that name a lot. But before we get into, before we just go ahead and continue painting this, you might ask, Keenan, how the heck did you get to this point? Okay? I don't like it that you just start the show and you just go straight to whatever you're doing. I want to see some process. I want to learn. We got to learn on this place, right? And I'm more than happy to show you that, exactly that. Alright, so let's go ahead and jump into the time lapse. I'll be pausing it every now and then just when I need to explain something. But for the most part, if you want to see basically how I even got to the sketch, that was covered in yesterday's show. So simply go to YouTube, visit my channel, and check out KNKL episode 106. No, well, that way you'll be able to see how we got to the sketch. But now we're going into the color. And I want to follow up. For those of you who were here yesterday, I want to follow up with something that I was saying last time. And that was about how, because yesterday was all about art block. And a big thing that I tell a lot of people to do is if you're ever feeling like you're just kind of stuck on a piece, take the day, especially if you're finishing up the day, take the piece and just like walk away from it, sleep on it, right? A lot of people say, sleep on a decision, sleep on the piece. Literally take your monitor, set it on your bed, and then sleep on it, right? And then when you awake in the morning, you'll have a fresh mind and you'll be able to look at it with fresh eyes and you'll be like, oh, I totally see what needs to happen here. I see the changes that need to be made and all those types of things. A couple of the changes that I made was originally I just had her hair kind of like flowing from behind the hat and it wasn't like connecting right here like to actually where her hair would be. So I put a line coming from her head down to here. And for those of you who just check out the sketch yesterday, you'll see the addition that I made and a couple other things that I changed. But overall, yeah, it worked really well, and I was able to awaken and check it out and see the changes that I needed to make. But that's enough about that. Let's go ahead and get back into the masking. Talk about what I am doing here. You might be noticing that I am working with a lot of dark colors, and the reason why I like to do this is because I like to think about what the colors of the shadows of this character would be, right? So if her hat is obviously red, I'm going to paint it like a dark red. Okay? New thoughts there, new strategies there. Because the reason why I paint dark is because I will then paint light onto it like that. And it's much more natural and easy. And it just feels really awesome to paint light onto a subject as opposed to painting darkness, painting shadow, right? Do not cross over to the dark side, right? Bring light to the subject. And from what I've noticed, because I used to do it the other way, I used to paint shadow all the time. But from what I've noticed, painting light is just so much more natural. You learn so much more. And to be honest, it's a lot more fun. Because as much as I love painting and shading stuff, I didn't really enjoy painting shadow or like trying to figure out like, where did the shadows go? But then when you think about just the light, where's light hitting, you only need to think about one thing after that, and it's a lot easier. Hope that makes sense. That was just kind of an incoherent ramble, but maybe those of you out there can decode what I just said. Alright. So, yeah, I'm glad you guys are enjoying this over here. So, continuing. So you can see, basically, let's talk a little bit about the face. Okay, so I'm actually painting the face here. And I can't remember if I actually painted it earlier. Did I paint it earlier? And then I changed it? Because this is a place where I actually had some trouble. I was trying to figure out, okay, do I want her face to be kind of like purpley or blue? Because I was looking at her model and it's kind of like purple around the edges and then it fades to a blue. And I was like, how the heck am I going to do that? Do I even want to do that? And so I just kind of started painting it. I was like, oh, maybe I should make it blue highlights because that's a lot like how I did Tristana. Like her skin is really blue and I like that. But for some reason, I imagined Lulu having more of a purple skin, and I wanted to go for that. So you can see me trying to get it all figured out here. And I had the advantage of having a little bit of my values kind of worked in with the sketch, because I wanted like this big cast shadow from her hat to be going across the top part of her face so that we could see her glowing irises. So that kind of came in handy because it was really easy to just, work that in and then just drop the color behind it. And that's the way I like to work. Oh yeah, I actually haven't redone this yet. So watch what I do here. This is very, very important, because what I do here is I start painting this face, and then very quickly I start to notice that there's just not enough of a hue shift, right? It's like her hair's purple, and then her skin is just a lighter shade of that exact purple. And it just wasn't popping out as much. It didn't have enough of a change in value. So, and you can see I was working with like the cheek, like seeing if I wanted to, show that much definition with like the cheek being raised. And there were things that I liked about it, but in general, when I'm painting like the cute little girl characters, I usually like to kind of soften the cheeks a little bit and almost like not show like any of like the creases happening. Sometimes I can do it, but it's really hard. It's really hard to do, so I usually just take the easy route and just make everything nice and soft. So very soon you're going to notice that I just go ahead. See, look, I changed the hue of the skin. I'm like, okay, let's just try blue. Let's just try blue on the skin. And then very quickly I just kind of add in the purples around the nose, the cheeks areas, and that just brings the life back into it. And so I started liking this. Oh, and also I had to keep in mind that there was a secondary light source coming from the magic on her hand. That's why I drew that there, because I wanted to make sure that everything that's around that hand is being affected by this pinkish light. So another good thing to keep in mind, make sure you know where all your light sources are coming from. That way you can light and paint your picture accordingly. You can set it up, so that way it makes rendering all the more easy. And for this one, the light is coming from the same direction as it is in the other pieces, from the top left, and it's just going to be kind of cascading across everything. So it's pretty fun to just kind of figure out what parts of the character will be lit, what parts of the costume and the skin, all that stuff will be lit, and what parts won't be. And it is very, very fun and challenging. Very challenging. This one has been more challenging than the other ones for some reason. And I can't quite figure out why. But I'm really enjoying the way that this is coming out so far. So, yes, people are saying that they do have trouble with female faces. Female faces are very, very challenging. Although, they're challenging in a way of, it's almost like you have to work less on them. You know what I mean? It's like you lay in the facial features, and then you almost have to like create the definition and the detail with the most simplicity, like the simplest strokes, the fewest amount of strokes or whatever, just like the smoothest transitions that you can possibly do. Like too much detail, too much stuff, it makes it look weird. It makes it look, the face looks less, I don't want to say like attractive, but you know what I mean. It's less easy on the eyes. The more lines and like detail and like little things you put into it. So simpler is always better. And I like simple. So yeah, that's why I like drawing cute little Yordle girls. I don't know. So anyway, let's continue. Oh, now I am painting. I'm doing the famous line painting. And this goes back to a question that was asked yesterday about how I go about taking away the lines or making the lines more subtle in my paintings. And a big way that I like to get started with this is actually taking the lines, which are on their own layer, right, down here, that final copy two, that is my line layer. And now you're going to notice what I've done is I've hit this little button here which locks the transparent pixels, and now it's going to allow me to basically color just the lines. I color just the lines. And basically what I do, a rule of thumb, is I'm coloring the lines a dark version of whatever color is around it. So like you'll see the hat, it goes from being a black line to being a very, very dark orange line. And then I'll paint like the hair, dark purple lines, dark red lines on the hat, stuff like that. And in general, I've noticed that like dark red usually works really well with a lot of things, especially when you're painting like something that is alive. Red lines tend to just give life to whatever thing you're painting. So I usually like to go for red. But yeah, try it out for yourself. I really I love painting lines. It's like the most fun thing ever. So yeah, moving on, we're going to be doing some more rendering here as soon as we're done here. Okay, so we're moving on to some more rendering, and you guys are going to see how I go about rendering the face. You guys are going to see my my technique. My technique with rendering the face and how I actually, right now what I'm doing is I'm working over top of everything now. Over top of the lines, over top of the mask and everything. And I call this the OP layer because it is OP, as you can see right there. So this is basically just me figuring out the exact lines. I'm eyedropping by hitting Alt while I have my brush selected. It'll toggle it over to the eyedrop. Just click it, release Alt, and then I can go back to painting. And that's how I blend. And I'll show you guys that real time after the time lapse is done. We got about 4 minutes left on this. And you guys can basically see how like the amount of detail and like changes that I'm doing to the piece now are little, if any. All I'm doing here is I'm just softening. I'm softening and almost like adding a painted texture to what was already there. Because basically the way that I look at it is I like the way that the picture looks. I like the way that her face looks right now. And too much detail, too much messing around with it, fudging around with the, you know, whatever, you know, just like making it look like it's painted or fully rendered. Sometimes it just like takes away from the simplicity of just the lines with the color behind it, if that makes sense. So if I do any overpainting on the face, it's usually very, very subtle changes. And I think this is actually the most fun part. I love painting faces, just because of all the subtleties and I still half the time don't know exactly what I'm doing. I'm still trying to just like figure things out. It's a little bit of a puzzle, especially when you have a couple light sources happening, as well as like this cast shadow that's going over the top of her face and then the glowing eyes. You know, stuff like that is always very interesting. Oh, that just made me think of something. I need to take the glow of her eyes, like that little green, and put a little bit of green on the inside of that hair, maybe. Yeah, I'll just kick a little shadow there and put a little bit of green on her hair there. That would look really sweet. That'll look really sweet. Yes. Oh, and people are saying that her eye, the whites of her eyes are slightly red. Yes, that's because of the magic here. Again, it's kind of affecting the side of her face there, turning it sort of pink, and as well as her eyes, it'll make it sort of pinkish. And it also makes it look like she is bloodthirsty, which I like. So now I'm going in and I'm figuring out the nose. And again, you can see me try out a bunch of little things here. One thing that I always like to do is always make sure you do that cast shadow from the nose. It's really, really important to throw in there. But also make sure you try to kick it off to the side, because if you put it straight down, that's what I used to do. Looks like a Hitler mustache. You don't want that. You don't want Hitler, Lulu. Not up in here. Not up in here. She's evil. Evil. Yeah. So, yeah, here's me just trying to figure out the nose, trying to put in those slight renderings and try to figure out the actual form of it. And I noticed that, you know, I tried to actually, like, check this out specifically. When I put that shadow there, it made it look like the nose was, like it popped out more. Like it was more like a human nose. But something that I really liked about before I did that was that it almost like flattened the face a little bit. It made her nose, like the bridge of her nose was wider. Isn't that interesting how just that little shading right there can make it appear that way? So very quickly I go back in and I take note of what was happening before to make it look like the bridge of her nose was spread out a little bit more. And then I go about just figuring that out. Just doing subtle things, as well as when I'm doing this, I want to make sure I stress to you guys, I'm stressing this to you right now, whenever you're doing OP layers, especially in the face, when you want to try something, make sure you do it on a layer above. That way, if all hell breaks loose and you need to go back, you can just, you know, delete that layer and you can go back to it. As opposed to trying to frantically go back in the history to where you were and then finding out that you don't have enough history and you're stuck with basically what you had and you don't know what it was before, and then you're completely crazy and you're like, oh, it was so good before, but really you don't know for sure. It's just in your mind. So please do yourself a favor when you're doing stuff like this. Notice how I'm working. This is the OP layer and I'm working on a layer above it. That way I can always go back. So yeah, I just did that. I kind of spread the light out a little bit more over her nose, and then it gave me that really nice kind of flattened, more flattened bridge look on her nose, and I love that. So yeah, I'm really, really liking the way that her face was turning out, because for those of you who saw yesterday's show, I was talking about, I like the fact that Lulu can be very cute, but also she has like this dark, kind of interesting side of her personality, and so I wanted to make sure that I captured that in this drawing. I just find it looks good when you like put shadows over people's faces. I don't know why. I like that. I like it when there's shadows like going across the cheeks and the top part of the head. Something about it just looks very dramatic. Very dramatic. Oh yes. So now I'm just going through and I am overpainting and doing some blending. And this is basically what I'll be showing you guys real time that I do. How I like to go about just like blending some lines and how you can also create a more realistic rendered look for your paintings, right? I like to leave a little bit of the lines in there, but yeah, for those of you who just like, I'll teach you a couple different things. One, how you can leave the lines in, and two, how you can completely get rid of them. Because there's some places here, like right here, where I've completely omitted lines, and other places like the side of her dress and her shirt that I've kept them in there. On purpose, because I'm professional, I know exactly what I'm doing, okay? So, anyway. So I think that's about it. Yeah. Oh, and something really important there. This can go into talking about design. Because I kind of changed a little bit of her dress designs. Made them a little bit more like kind of angular, a little bit more gothic looking. And I noticed that the only thing that wasn't like angular like that anymore was this little swoosh on her hat. Would you call that a swoosh? I don't know what you call it. So anyway, what I did was like, okay, I got to make this look a little bit more angular, so to have consistency within my design. So I just go through, and that's one of the last things that I did. I just kind of made it a little more angular. It still has that little swoopy quality to it. And that lands us where we are now. Okay, so what I'm going to be demonstrating real time for you guys is how to get rid of lines completely and let values and shapes do your talking, right? Let them do the talking for your lines. And then also just how to keep the lines in, you know. And in fact, it might just be easier to show you guys, you know, basically what I'm doing here. Okay, so as you can see right here, I am working on top of, this is my character layer. I've actually flattened Lulu into one piece, and except for her arm, which sits in front, because what I wanted to do was have this magic. I wanted to have this magic sitting in front of her arm. And I did this because I really wanted to make sure that, you know, like this arm was sticking in front of this one. That was a problem that I was having. I was like, oh, it looks kind of like, you know, at first glance, you know, this arm almost looks like that arm, you know, so I wanted to make sure that, you know, it was clearly this one in front. So I put that little bit of magic in there, that atmosphere, that forced atmosphere, right? Whenever you need to find a reason to kick something in front of the other thing, you can always find a reason. There's fog there. It's cold outside and you can see the breath, right? Now there's more atmosphere in front of everything. Or it's just plain the style. Okay, anyway, enough blabbing. Let's go ahead and talk about how to get rid of your lines. Okay, so check this out. So clearly you can see lines here. Yes? Yes. So the way that I would go about getting rid of this is one of two ways. And here's how you can make it work for you. Basically, the only reason why I can get rid of this line here is because of the values, the difference in values. Okay? Let's take a look at this. Let's take a look closely. The value here is much darker than the value here. Yes, okay, yes, everybody knows this. But, however, if, say, the value is more like this, let me show you what would happen. If the value is darker like that, not only would it be harder for me to paint this line away, but it starts to lose the clarity. You see what I'm saying here? Like, for instance, squint your eyes and tell me now where the edge of this dress ends, right? You can still kind of see it because of the gold there, but as soon as I take that away, and now I say, show me where the edge of the dress is, you can clearly see it. So that's the first thing that you want to ask yourself whenever you're thinking about taking away lines from a drawing, is make sure that you set it up in such a way that whatever you're going to be taking away the line from has the value to back it up, okay? Because now it's not a line, it's a shape, right? You want to think about this shape that's happening. Okay, now hang on, wait. This shape. You want to think about this shape that's happening right here. Okay, there's no more, like, all this stuff in here doesn't matter. All that matters is this shape and then, you know, everything that's happening outside of it. Brilliant! Okay, so now the way that you can go about getting rid of it is you can simply kind of blend. Something that I really like to do is I'll just eyedrop, right? You click Alt, you just hold Alt, and then it'll go straight to your eyedropper. You just grab that, and you can actually grab the line and just start blending that in with the color there. You see what I'm saying? Like blend it in with the colors that are already there. And notice how the line almost becomes a gradient. Like it gradates right to the line. And then effectively you're creating the illusion that there's no line there, but it still is there. It's just you're gradating from whatever color was there to the line. And usually this works good anyway because, like I said, like your values should be in place for this to happen. And then you can just go ahead and grab the other, the other value on the other side. And then boom! There you go. See? So that is how you render your lines away. Just make sure your values are set up and all that good stuff is there. But that is not exactly the way that I wanted this drawing to go. One of the big things that I feel were awesome about Tristana and Poppy was that there were some of the lines still existing within the painting. So I do want to make sure I kind of hang on to a little bit of that. There's a little bit of rendering and stuff going on in here, but for the most part, I like the fact that the lines show, and I want them to show themselves. Show the colors. Show the true colors. Another way to get rid of a line, again, let's talk about values, right? Before I painted this, there was a line right there, okay? Now basically all a line is just an indication. When you draw a line, that's your brain having an indication that there's a change in contrast here, or there's a change in value here. So as long as there still is that change in value, see, like from here to here, it's a little bit darker. As long as that value is still there, you can still create that line, okay, without having to draw it straight across. Just have that change in value happen. And there you have the secret. Blah, blah. Brilliant, brilliant. Okay, so what else did I want to talk about today? How long have we been going for? Oh! 20 minutes? Perfect. You know what that means. It's time for question catapults. Any questions that you have, please cast them over the castle walls. For those of you watching for the first time, you might have no idea what that means. Basically, it's just Q&A. Send any questions that you have, and I'll answer them. And then we'll end day 107 of the KNKL show. Oh, and I'm so excited for tomorrow. Oh, I'm so excited for Thoughtful Thursday. Last week we didn't do one because I was showing you guys the awesome freelance work that I was doing for the, not my freelance work that was awesome, but the awesome company that is allowing me to do freelance work for them. That's what I should have said. That's what I meant. That's what I meant, okay? But yes, last Thursday we didn't do a Thoughtful Thursday, and this Thursday it's going to be awesome. Super excited to talk to you guys. All right, a couple questions coming in. What are some super easy ways to sneak in dynamic lighting? Cherry Nip asks. Dynamic lighting. I think a really good way to even just get started with dynamic lighting is just to practice, because this is something that I've been wanting to do too. It's like, and I still am learning. Like for instance, when I think of dynamic lighting, I think of, oh hey, the hat right here is catching all this light, and then it's going to cast this shadow across this ear here, and then it's going to pick up again on the other side. And it looks like this cool cast shadow. And you might ask me, well, how the heck do you know that the shadow is going to land just like that, and like the cast shadow is going to go across her face like that? And I guess the best way for me to describe it or say what my thought process is on this is that I kind of just figure out what's the most important thing? What's the most important thing that I want to show with my lighting? And then I almost build the rest of my scene around that. You know, like for instance, the most important thing in this piece was that we had this cast shadow over her face. And in order to do that, I knew that I would have to have the hat, you know, out like that, and then the light would have to be coming in from this way, so that way it hit the hat right here, and then it would cast this shadow, you know, kind of like that. In fact, well, if the cast shadow was more like that, the light would have to be a little bit more like that. And that's going to be a good thing to keep in mind going forward, because apparently I thought it was supposed to be more like that. But no, the light comes in like that. So set it up a little bit more to the point where, you know, it kind of like the light serves your scene, as opposed to like, you know, like just trying to figure out the light and then build everything off of that, which you can do too. But oftentimes I almost see the scene. I see the scene lit already. And then another good way to practice as well is work in black and white. Work in black and white to study values and study lighting patterns. That's a really, really good way to do it. And let's go ahead and check out the values of this puppy right here. What are our values? Okay. So you can see here, yeah, a really good way to practice dynamic lighting is work in black and white, because once you do that, you're no longer worried about like, ooh, well, what about the hue shift and how's the light going to change, you know, this from like a purple to a slight red, you know, what's going on here. You don't need to worry about that. When you're working in black and white, all you have to do is just, you know, be darker gray, lighter gray. And then you really start to kind of grasp, you know, the contrast that's supposed to be happening with your dynamic lighting. Alrighty then. Next question. Actually, I don't know. Are there any more questions? Oh, okay. Next question coming in from Aliano. And this will be the last question, and then we're going to end 107. He asked, any tips for exercises on how to draw better with a tablet? Like, get a better feel and control. Great question, Aliano. Beautiful question. Someone else is asking about how tall are the castle walls, 40 to 50 feet. Yeah, I'd say about that. Yeah, you gotta get some good catapults for these things. But back to your question, Aliano, talking about getting comfortable with a tablet. This is something that a couple of my friends have recently, you know, they'll come over and they'll hang out with me and be like, oh, hey, what's that thing you're using? Oh, that's so cool. You just like draw on this tablet, and they sit down and they want to, you know, work with it, right? And they're like, oh, but I have to like I have to draw down here and look at the screen. Like, how do you do that? And the best way that I can say is experience, which is obvious. You know, just do more of it, But then also, I think another thing that really helps me out is, like, I think a lot of the control, in a way, is sort of taken out of the equation, right? Because it's not possible. It's not possible to be as accurate when you're looking at a tablet and looking at a screen as you are when you have an actual piece of paper and a pencil drawing like this, right? So in order to combat that, what I do is when I start sketching, I like to use like a broad brush like this, like the chalk brush. Really, you can use any type of brush. But rather than drawing like clean lines, like a perfect circle, right? Instead what I'll do is I'll draw like this, you know, like I'll draw something really messy, and then I'll almost erase and sculpt the shape into the form that I want. Does that make sense? You know, so in this stage, like I'll have a lot of fun with drawing just like a face, right? And this is like really rough, but this is basically how I work. I'm not worried about precision. In fact, I really believe when you're sketching things in the beginning, a lot of it is reliant on not being precise. It's all about like flowing, letting things just like come out of you naturally. And I feel that when you work with a lighter brush as well, your mind is just able to see things more clearly and more easily. So I'd really suggest you try that out. Try out using a light brush, or like a textured brush, and then almost think about it as line sculpting. This is my technique. I don't know if it'll work for you, but what if it does? And then you can just go ahead and you can darken it when you're done, right? Which is exactly what I do. I like doing it that way. That's how I like to draw line art, and rely less on precision and more on the fact that you have a program that you can lay down a line and then like erase any evidence that it was ever there. Use that to your advantage, because, you know, it's digital. That's what it's all about. Alrighty, peoples. Thank you for those awesome questions. I do apologize if I'm not able to get to all of them as usual, but thank you for joining me live on Twitch as usual. People on YouTube, thumbs up if you like it, thumbs down if you don't. My name is Keenan Lafferty. I'll see you guys tomorrow for Thoughtful Thursday. Got an awesome lesson planned. Really excited to talk to you guys about that. Until then, you guys take care. See you.